Hey everybody, it's Brian Asbury, and I just wanted to welcome you to today's episode. If you could, like today's episode, hit that subscribe button, and let's continue to grow the developmentally speaking brand.
Today, my guest is former WWE Tag Team Champion and Southern OVW Southern Tag Team Champion, Bull Buchanan. Bull, how's it going?
It's going great, going great. For you,
So, Bull, what made you want to get into professional wrestling?
like I said, it was a guy locally here that I found. They were doing shows around here. A guy named James Hammonds. Um, him and his brother, he wrestled as Billy Jack, uh, and a bunch of other guys. Had been trained by Ted Allen. This guy trained Arn Anderson and Bubba Rod, Big Boss Man. So James trained me. And I just started working his shows around here, and then I, of course, like everybody else, I just branched out and started traveling as much as I could, and it just went from there.
How did you get noticed by the WWE at the time? Because there wasn't
Um,
a developmental in place at that point in time, right?
no, there wasn't. So I went to work about 6 months in. I went to work for a company in Atlanta called North Georgia Wrestling. A guy named Sammy Kent, and uh, he had an affiliation with a guy named Joe Pedicino, who had previously had a block of wrestling on Atlanta TV channel. I think it was channel 36 originally, Superstars of Wrestling, which showed. It started at like 7 o'clock on Saturday night and went to 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. They showed World Class, they showed NWA, they showed WWF, they showed Memphis. Uh, Geez, who am I leaving out? And it would usually wind up at 1 o'clock in the morning with either a match from Japan or Puerto Rico. So it was just a wrestling fan's dream. But Eddie kind of dwindled down, but the actual organization was still left. So I went to work for them, and they had an affiliation with Smoky Mountain Wrestling at the time. New Jack and Mustafa started working there about the same time I did. They had a little more time in the business than I did, so that they kind of took me under their wing. Well, when they went to Smoky Mountain, the deal was that Sammy Kent, who I don't think he owned it, but was the face of North Georgia Championship Wrestling. Him and a guy named Danny Dees. They would get a show at the Cobb County Civic Center. Smoky Mountain would put a show on, and through Smoky Mountain's affiliation with the WWF, usually one of those matches was a WWF match. I think one of them was Lex Luger. Randy Savage was there once or twice. It was always a big name. It was a big draw. Smoky Mountain actually did the show, but since Joe Pedicino still had the TV, and he carried Smoky Mountain on Saturday night, uh, they gave North Georgia one or two matches I think one match every time they came.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always whoever was, the headliner or the hot feud at the time. And New Jack Mustafa went and got hired to Smoky Mountain. Well, the next time they came, me and a guy named Lee Thomas had been working Angle for the belt for a long time, and we got picked to be on the show. You still there?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, we got picked to be on the show. So I had met Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson working on the Indies in Georgia and Alabama. So I knew them, and they talked to Cornette for me. And, of course, New Jack Mustafa talked to Cornette for me. So Cornette come out and watched the match. And I think the leg drop off the top really got me over with him. So about 6 months later, he gave me a call. He told me, he said, well, I don't have any spots right now, but I keep you in mind. About 6 months later, he called me and said, hey, I got a spot for you. So I went to Smoky Mountain, and that's where that's where I got my foot in the door. Even though it wasn't developmental at the time,
Mm-hmm.
Jim Cornette was already working for them. And, a lot of guys, I think just everybody down there, Glenn Jacobs, Kane, Al Snow, God, I know I'm forgetting a lot of people, but a lot of guys, even like Dirty White Boy, Tracy Smothers,
Mm-hmm.
got a little run up there after Smoky Mountain shut down. But a lot of the young guys, Boo Bradley was down there,
Mm-hmm.
the Headbangers, it was a developmental territory, if not in name, at least
Mm-hmm.
in practice anyway, because there was a bunch of young guys like myself that got our foot in the door with WWF through Smoky Mountain.
So, how was your initial first run before you went to OVW?
Um, well, sometimes thinking about it, when I got hired with WWF, they sent me to Memphis
Mm-hmm.
to work for Jerry Lawler. At that time, I think probably, and I could be wrong, because I think maybe, you know, I think maybe New York might have been helping Glenn a little bit down in
Mm-hmm.
Smoky Mountain. Um, but myself and Dwayne Johnson and Bart Sawyer all went out there at the same time, and I think we might actually be the first class of developmental. Even
Mm-hmm.
though I know everybody thinks of OVW first, but the thing with Memphis was it wasn't a we had all been working a little bit at the time. I think
Mm-hmm.
Rocky may have been working the shortest time, but Bart had a couple of years in. I had about a year and a half in, something like that. Um, so you just went down there and went right to work. There was no real training facility.
Mm-hmm.
So went down there and did that, and then of course we got the call at the Truth Commission. I think we started the Truth Commission first of the year, and went down to Memphis. Got to get stayed down there for maybe 6 months, I think, and got the call up. And then we did Survivor Series that year. The screw job.
Mm-hmm.
We did Survivor Series that year, and then so I guess we had about a year run, and it kind of just it ran its course. But they kept me under contract, and of course, I had a good relationship with Jim Cornette,
Mm-hmm.
and I had also built good relationship with Jim Ross, because he would come down to Smoky Mountain every now and then, and him and Jimmy were buddies. So he knew who I was, and he liked my work ethic. So I had those two in my corner, so to speak. And I called him. I said, "Hey, look, um, I can sit at home and do nothing, and you guys pay me. Or if it's cool with you, I could go out here and start working indies again and just get better, and maybe figure out a new gimmick or something." So Corny said, of course, and JR approved it. He was head of talent relations at the time. He said, "Just don't get hurt," and I promised him I wouldn't. And I just went back to working the indies, and I did that, and got back in the gym, and just kind of recreated myself. And I can't remember. It was during the summertime. Jimmy called me and said, "Hey, I got an idea for a new gimmick. Uh, I don't know if you'd heard, if I'd heard. I hadn't at the time, but I was about to strangle somebody in Stanford, so I moved back to Louisville, and him and Danny Davis had got together and created OVW, or I think Danny had already created it, but Jimmy bought into it, and
Mm-hmm.
so they were doing it together. So he said, I got an idea for a new gimmick, and he laid it all out for me, and I think it was 2 months later I debuted on TV up there, and you know just went from there.
Now, how long were you in OVW? Were you teaming with Boss Man, or was that after OVW?
No, OVW is crazy, because Jimmy's idea was Bull Buchanan. I was a prisoner on work release from Eddyville, Kentucky, the state pen down there, and Kenny Bolin was my manager. It was great. I mean, you know to me, I love WWF and WWE. I love it to this day. I loved working over Japan. I thought Japan was great.
Mm-hmm.
But that was some of the greatest times, because working with Jim Cornette in Smoky Mountain and working with him in OVW was what I grew up thinking that the wrestling business
Mm-hmm.
was. It was always kind of a throwback to what I grew up as. Now, I'm not one of these old guys that the business is dying, I don't think it is. I don't think you can kill it.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I know that the business has to move along,
Mm-hmm.
but it was just everything made sense. Everything, you did it for a reason. There wasn't, just doing it for the sake of doing it. So it was great. But I think I was down there. I think I debuted on TV maybe in the end of August, and then I was there till maybe the 1st of March. But I got to call it with Boss Man. But Jimmy called me on a Tuesday, I think, and said, "Hey," or called me on Monday and said, "Hey, you got to be at TV uh, tomorrow." We did TV on Wednesday, but we did St. Teresa's. It was a gym, St.
Mm-hmm.
Teresa's gym. We did that on Tuesday nights, and I said, "Yeah, I'm driving up tomorrow." He said, "No, you got to be on SmackDown tomorrow night." I said, "That's great. Are you kidding me?" And we had always talked about the Bull Buchanan gimmick since I was a prisoner
Mm-hmm.
of doing, and that was, a dream for me was to be able to do something with Boss Man. But I said several times, "Hey, maybe I could be his trustee, or kind of like Nails, but yeah, I'm with him."
Mm-hmm.
But no, he says, "No, you've got to find a Boss Man suit." So they changed me from a prisoner to a prison guard. I had a ponytail. I had, I was bald, but I had grown out a ponytail, so I looked more like a prison inmate. And I got TV that next day, and I'd never met Ray before, but we hit it off, right from the start. But I remember asking Ray. I said, "Ray, I don't think this flies as a prison guard." I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Well, let's go ask the boss." My experience with Vince so far. Back then, when I signed, I guess in '95 or '96, they flew you up to New York. It was a very one-on-one kind of thing with Vince. They
Mm-hmm.
flew you up. They gave you the tour. Actually, Dwayne Johnson and myself were up there same day. We took the tour. They showed us the building, all the facilities, and you go in and sit down with Vince and talk about, what he has in mind for you. Uh, but and I would see him in the hallways, and we would speak,
Mm-hmm.
cordials. But I'd never just walked into his office before. And so Ray said, "Well, let's go ask the boss." So I walked behind him, and I was waiting. I was ready to stand at the door for 30 minutes, an hour, whatever, till Vince walked out, and I could, "Hey, Vince, can I talk to you?" Ray just gives a little slight tap on the door, opens the knob, and walks in and says, "Hey, boss, can we talk to you?" I'm peeking around the corner like, "Is it cool for me to be in here?" But yeah, Vince said, I said, I explained to him, and he said, "Oh yeah," he said, "I watched your stuff down there," but he said, "Yeah," he said, "You mind cutting it?" I said, "Absolutely not." So went out there, cut it off, and me and Ray just, we hit it off from the beginning, and um, I wish we had a longer run
Mm-hmm.
with each other. I was very disappointed, to the point of almost being a little mad when they broke up, but Ray had I think Ray had needed to get his knee scoped for a while, and he had some other injuries, and he was going to take some time off. So, and he said they wanted to give me a little singles run there. So, he was all for it. He kind of had talked me into it because, uh, I thought we would have had a good longer run.
Mm-hmm. Now, how was your after teaming with Bossman? How was your run? Your run with WWE after that.
Oh, well, we did the RTC thing, and
Mm-hmm.
that was great. We got a good run out of that. We got the tag belts out of it. But then again, the same, kind of the same thing. Well, not the same thing, actually. Uh, it was during that time, the RTC thing was starting to wind down. Uh, there again, I thought we could have had a little bit longer run, but,
Mm-hmm.
because we had so much heat. I mean, people just really hated us. Um, but it kind of wound down, and there again, I was sitting at home. I was getting paid a lot better this time. So, um, but once again, I called Jim Ross up, and I said, "Hey, JR," I said, "I'm just sitting here, and now you're actually paying me enough money where I can afford to do it." The first time I went to OVW, I was still getting just developmental money,
Mm-hmm.
and the car I was driving up there was starting to show its age. It was nice years ago, but with all the driving.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, hey, you pay me enough money. I'm not going to sit at home. Do you mind if I go up to OVW and work with the young guys, or do whatever, sweep up things, hell, whatever you guys want me to do? And of course, JR said, yeah, go. So I called Jimmy. Told him, say, hey, when I'm available. When do you want me in? He said, shit, come in next week. And I started working on a gimmick. I don't want to get any heat from the fans, but because it's not. It wasn't my gimmick, but
Mm-hmm.
I had always liked the Waylon Mercy gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
I always loved the movie Cape Fear, and I loved the Waylon Mercy gimmick, and I never understood why it didn't get a better run. Once I got in the business, I understood, because I think Danny, had some nagging injuries, and
Mm-hmm.
he just, wasn't worth it. But and I think Bray Wyatt does it, better than anybody could ever imagine. But I had when I knew the RTC was coming to an end, I'd kind of start hitting it around to the guys, that kind of the people I would throw ideas at. Michael Hayes was one of them. Michael Hayes was always great. I could always, trust him to shoot straight with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him about it, and he said, yeah, I think it's a good idea. Get a chance to talk to Vince. So, and now Vince and I's relationship was we'd broken the ice there. So, I stopped him in the hall, and we started talking about it, and he didn't really give me an answer, but he seemed like he was receptive to it.
Mm-hmm.
Next day, I saw Shane, and Shane said, "Man, you hit a home run with the old man." And he really, really liked that idea. So I went down to OVW, and but he said we had to update it. We had to make it a more modern version. So I went down to OVW that time with that in mind, and the mad genius Jimmy Cornette. We came up with an angle, or he came up with an angle where, David Flair and I was stalking David Flair. We stole his dog. I stole his dog out of his apartment, and stuck him out in the middle of a cornfield somewhere in video. I mean, just, it was great stuff. I think I stalked Flash Flanagan for a while, slashed his tires, caused him to wreck. It was Doug Basham was working as the machine down there at the time with Victoria. Was his not his valet, but Victoria had started working, so she was part of his group. But I caught them at home and stole his belt, and just stuff like that. Um, but and then I got called back up, but I was just doing house shows and dart matches on TV.
Mm-hmm.
But the second time in OVW was just as great. I got to work with the first time down there, I got to work with there was more homegrown talent down
Mm-hmm.
there at that time, because it was actually it literally Jimmy had just got it started as the developmental program. I think there was a big 7-foot guy named Russ. I can't remember his name.
Mm-hmm.
He was down there. There was another guy named Steven or Stefan or something like that. But there was only like 3 or 4 of us that were actually WWE talent. Everybody else was Danny's guys from down there. But some of Danny's guys were Damager,
Mm-hmm.
one of the Basham brothers. Once I got up there, Doug Basham, the other Basham brother. Let's see. The first time down there was Rico Constantino was down there. I love Rico. Rico Constantino was down there. But then the second time I went, let's see who else. I'm sorry. Rob Conway was down there. I worked with Rob a bunch down there. Nick Dinsmore was down there. But like I say, these guys wasn't even signed. They were just Danny's talent.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually they did, and had good runs, and they should have. They were just, all of them were great. But the second time down there was when the golden class was there. Orton, Brock, Shelton, Cena, all those guys were down there. And man, it didn't take a rocket science to figure out those guys were going to be stars. They were all going to be stars. It was just a question of how big of stars they would become. Batista was there. So I got a chance to get to know those guys, which was really really cool, especially later on to see what they did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, but it was great down there that time too.
How come the gimmick didn't make it to the main roster? Was there a reason?
Oh, who's that?
I said, how come that the gimmick you were working on in OVW didn't make it to the main roster when you came back up?
I don't know. When I was sitting at home, I'd learned at this point, that you know, if you just want to sit back and let things happen to you,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but instead that I had started writing and pitching ideas, and um, one of my ideals was the what I was working on in OVW, the Waylon Mercy gimmick. Uh, Vince had, I think it was Vince had, I don't, Vince is the one that pitched it to me. And I think it may have been maybe Hunter's ideal, or Stephanie told me about it. So I think maybe she said it was Hunter's idea of having me as Jamie Noble's cousin,
Mm-hmm.
which I love that idea because I love Jamie Noble and I knew Nydia and that but their idea was to have me as Jamie Noble's cousin, bring me back. Um, but Paulie was the head writer at SmackDown at the time, and Paulie and myself and I had a relationship. I had worked for Paulie back in I think 1996. After Smoky Mountain shut down, I got to go up there, uh, and it was actually kind of that in a roundabout way that got my contract
Mm-hmm.
with Vince, from what I'm told. Uh, I went and worked with Paulie in ECW. Myself and a guy named Billy Black worked over in Japan a lot. Him and Joel Deaton. Joel wasn't available, so Billy said, "Well, I know somebody I can bring." So we went up there, we worked the Eliminators.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we had a good match. Paulie was really impressed and wanted to do something with us. But I had asked because Jim Cornette was always like a mentor, and really, was always there for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that him and Paulie had a little bit of heat at the time over the whole New Jack thing. So I had asked Jimmy, I'd sent, I'd called him and asked, hey, look, is there gonna be any heat if I go up there? He said, absolutely not. Go up there and go up there and work. See what you can get worked out for yourself. So I went up there. Well, I got back home, and a couple of weeks later, and they'd want us to come back in ECW, and I wanted to come back. At that time, that was the place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for the young guys like me. They had never, we'd never seen anything like that before. So, but Jim Cornette calls me on Sunday night and says, "Well, hey kid, you ready to come to work?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I got you a contract in the mail." And I said, "How'd you pull that off?" And he said, "Well, when I saw Vince at TV this week, I reminded him about you. I've been talking about you." I said, "Yeah, he went to work for Paul Lee this past week, and Vince said sign him." So, so, but Paul Lee and I had really, and Paul Lee, of course, said, "Hey, I can't blame him." But during a few times when I was off the road, me and New Jack were really good friends, and I think maybe their first pay per view, I think maybe in Florida, they did a pay per view in Florida, and so we loaded up and went down there and hung out with New Jack. But I came to the show and I talked to Paul Lee again, and he said he still loved to use me. I was under contract with WWE, but it was during the time when you could. And I didn't have any idea they had a working relationship anyway at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, so Paulie and I had a pretty good relationship, and he just felt like me being with Nydia and Jamie, I would be the third wheel, and he came up with the B square idea. So yeah, the I think the Waylon Mercy thing kind of
Mm-hmm.
morphed into what was going to be, Jamie Noble's cousin, and but like I said, Paul, and looking back on it, I could see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
They had such a back then they had Jamie and Nydia had such a strong dynamic going.
Mm-hmm.
I could see where I could have been. It's like, oh yeah, and that guy too, kind of deal.
Hmm.
So I
See,
think that's
oh, see, I'm from Southern Indiana, so I got to see a lot of OVW.
oh
So,
great, yeah, yeah,
so like that period, like as your run was coming to an end, and then like they were really trying to make new talent. Like it just seemed like they never gave anybody a chance to get over. It was when they brought the
yeah.
Bashams up, it was like you have this chance or Dinsmore or Brent Albright. They just I don't know what it was. They just like would turning over talent so fast.
Well, I think I don't know if this is the reason, but I always kind of thought that we went from being a company with, and I don't know what the number would be, but talent wise, we
Hmm.
went from being a company that size to doubling our size, you know, with the signing of a piece of paper.
Hmm.
And so, what do you do with all you want to integrate everybody in, but you know, you can only get so inflated with talent,
Hmm.
you know. Uh, so I think it kind of became a assembly line kind of,
Hmm.
you get up there, okay, you got 15 seconds to show us what you got, go.
Hmm.
And if you don't just knock it out of the park, then it's like, okay, on to the next one.
Hmm.
But
So how has life been after WWE?
oh, I mean, it's been great. After after well, I found out they broke me and Cena up, and I
Hmm.
kind of had a feeling at that point. I said, oh, okay, this might be the last rodeo.
Hmm.
But I had always wanted to work in Japan, and that was always my plan. Is to, okay, whenever this ends, even if I'm 65 years old and on a cane, I'm going to Japan. I'm working a match with somebody. I had always planned on going over there. So, D'Lo got released right after me, uh, and then not long after that, Matt, Rosie, and Jamal Eki, they got released, and so we all wound up in Japan together, and working for All Japan. And hell, man, I mean, you know, it'd be hard for me to say that WW. It'd be hard for me to say if you want to point to show somebody what I did,
Hmm.
not to point to WWE, but at the same time, I'm really proud of what we did over in Japan because I got to be instead of a gimmick or a character, I got to
Hmm.
be just kind of be me and just go out there and wrestle. But yeah, we worked for All Japan to I think maybe 2006, 2007. Jamal had went back to New York, and
Hmm.
Maddie had just got over there, and I think Maddie stayed on with All Japan for a while. But me and D'Lo had always been a tag team, and me and D'Lo had known each other since Smoky Mountain.
Hmm.
So we've been friends forever, and we finally got to be tag team partners over there. And we jumped to Noah, and then we had another run with Noah. I think up to maybe 2009, 2010. So man, it was great. It was just living another dream out. And I quit going to Japan in 2010. And I just felt like I need to start, not necessarily get totally out of the ring, but start winding it down. And
Hmm.
I had some friends at the sheriff's department here in where I live, and I think I went to work with them in 2012, and just worked my way up, and I wound up as an investigator, and then in the last couple of years, I've migrated over to the courthouse 9 to 5. So yeah, it's been great. It's been great, and of course, my son, Ben Buchanan, Brooks Jensen, he, I got a chance to train him and take him to all the places, that I used to go when I was just starting out. So a
Hmm.
lot of them are still there. Anarchy, Landmark Arena there in Cornelia, Georgia. Uh, got to go and, watch him do that. And now my younger son, he's 16. He's starting his career out, so I'm getting to go with him. So it's great, man. It's been really a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. Well, that's amazing. Everything seems like it's come full circle.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny now. I get out there with Zach, and I actually with Ben, of course, I knew before I went. I'd worked for the sheriff's department for about a year, I was working as a jailer. Everybody has to start, at the bottom. So I was working my way up. But I got to go to police academy and get out on the road as a deputy. And I just thought it'd be time to step away. So the sheriff's department threw me this real nice retirement show. I had all my friends on it. They flew D-Lo in. We got tagged one more time. But I always knew that, I was saving a match or two if the boys ever wanted to do it. So I actually got talked in, several times with tagging with Ben and actually working against him one time. And, people throughout my career, I've always heard that, I was stiff. Boy, they ain't never been in the ring with that guy. Anybody that watched the match the other night on NXT with him and Josh, he can go. But yeah, and then my younger son, he's wanting to do it. So I'm sure at some point I'll probably get back in there, on my walker or my cane and, hobble around the ring a little bit. Just so I just like to, I like to be able to say, like I said, when I grew up, I was a huge fan of the Von Erichs. I just thought that was a great story, and I always thought that'd be great, to have a bunch of sons and watch them go. You there?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, you said a
Oh,
bunch. You
all right.
said the Freebird's a bunch of sons, and then it cut out.
Oh, well, Fritz had all the boys out there, and I just always thought that would be the greatest thing. And so I'm a smaller version of it, but I'm getting to do the same thing with my sons now. So, and I'm loving it.
Good. I want to thank you for coming on today. I appreciate you coming on here and telling your story and talking a little bit about developmental.
Oh, no problem, man. I love to talk about it. It was a great time, man. God, I wish I could go back and do it again. Yeah. Too bad you have to get old.
I know. Well, I appreciate your time today, and
Yes,
I hope
sir. No
everything.
problem.
Thank you again, sir.
Thank you.